So let me introduce from Hungary. There will be CEO of the Central Media Group, Mr. Zoltán Varga. From Czech Republic, CEO of Vysoft Corporation, Václava Muchna. And for Slovakia, there will be CEO of Brain, Andreja Kiska, the younger one. So you do not expect the president. And the panel will be hosted by the editor-in-chief of Daily SME, Beata Balogová. So please welcome them on the stage.
Good morning, everybody. I will admit right at the beginning that one of the reasons why I agreed to moderate this session is that I actually do have a genuine interest to understand that where is the red line for businesses when they feel that now we do have a need to join the discussion about keeping the values and protecting democracy, when they understand that opening a kindergarten for employees might not be the utmost responsible act in a society where basically we see that several institutions and the basic values of democracy are attacked. And just one note, because I'm a journalist and I feel I need to react, that using the argument that we are not Hungary yet, I think it's a very poor comfort. And I don't think that it should be for us a judging line how good we are doing. And all of you operate in countries where it pays much better to lobby, to support the ruling party or trying to remain silent than to support the civil society, independent media, and speak out. Zoltán, you are the investor of one of the biggest and one of the last independent media company, and the propaganda, Viktor Orbán's propaganda machine blessed you with much interest. You have been subject of several smear campaigns. Why are you doing this? Why do you continue to support independent media and you actually continue speaking up? You sit here today and I'm sure your words will find their way to Budapest as well.
Thank you very much, first of all, being here. And it's a funny feeling, actually, to see that Hungary is a small country, but somehow we made actually being important on an international stage with our prime minister and with our policies. But coming back to the question, frankly, I think it relies on values, on integrity, and that's pretty much. So, and protecting your friends, your kids, your colleagues, and hoping a better future. So I cannot describe it better. It has to come from your soul, from your integrity, and from responsibility. Financially, it's not a good business, I have to say. Clearly, I can tell you my example. Ringi in Hungary is half of our size. So 50%, they are getting yearly 5 million euro from the state, being part of the propaganda machine. And frankly, we are getting zero, exactly zero. So the price of the freedom is 10 million euro, and I'm happy to pay for it, because I think that has to be.
Václav, you developed, if I understood right, you developed a product which went globally. You could have made a lot of money, but you made responsibility, social responsibility, sort of part of your business. And you are also, I was able to observe you in person, how you support independent journalism at an event in Prague. So what was was there a very concrete moment, if you could recall, so that we are not only talking about internal responsibility, but what made you to make this decision?
I remember that moment vividly. It was back in 2013 when an activist organization called Rekonstrukce státu, like Reconstruct the State, a group of activist organizations lobbied for more transparent laws to fight corruption. And one of the big issues of the Czech Republic back then that still is valid today is, for example, how political parties are funded. And back then I actually realized that a lot of these bribes that are happening are not going into the very pockets of the politicians, but they are so stupid that they use these bribes to fund their political parties. They don't even have their personal profits from it. So these were things that we were, approached to help with funding, and we gave them some money to sponsor some marketing activities, and we started to be closer. And a few years later, we realized, because I've been closer to that organization, I realized that people who run these NGOs are just like us, that they need to eat, they need a shelter, they have families, and until then we would only finance or fund the campaigns, and after that we started to fund actually their operations. And then several moments like that happened, and more entrepreneurs, were at it during the years. So that's how the society grew.
Andrea, you are coming from a family where you have both. You have a tradition of philanthropy, but you also have been able to observe the example how the state power can actually take action. And I see you are not discouraged by that. So what keeps you being active in that area? And if I understand correctly, you are very active in the area of education. That's you have chosen as your own area.
Yeah, I guess there are three main reasons, right? Like, one is, yes, I'm Andreja Kiska mladší, so I'm my father's son, which brings like a whole host of like challenges and specificities on its own. But frankly, it's been a huge inspiration, right? Like, my father is a founder of a non-profit called Dobrý, but I always think that the presidency itself was a much more complicated non-profit initiative than Dobrý ever was, and everything that happened after that, of course, as well. And the price of democracy, or at least for his values in Slovakia, is actually much greater than 10 million euros. So it seems like Slovakia is getting even more expensive than Hungary these days. So that's kind of like a reason number one. Number two, I'm a venture investor and a venture builder, so we are kind of the guys who are bringing the next generation innovation into economy, improving the productivity of the economy to drive economic growth. In order to bring innovation to any economy, you need stable rule of law and stable institutions to ensure that those innovations can thrive. So this is like a purely self-interested reason why I'm here and I'm talking about it. Look, like, nobody is going to pay for our pensions in 30 years if our economy is not going to innovate. And in order to innovate, we need very stable institutions that are able to diffuse those innovations, right? And then the third reason for me, businessmen like complex challenges. And I think that the world order established after Second World War is creaking heavily since the financial crisis in 2009. You have populists winning left or right. A lot of our institutions are under pressure, and there is no more impactful yet complex challenge for a businessman to tackle than what is the world order and democratic values gonna be represented by in the 21st century. And since complexity equals excitement for businessmen, there is no more exciting topic to converse about than this one.
I'm very glad you are saying this, because my next question is somehow linked to this. As a journalist, I have been speaking to CEOs who privately explained to me that talking about issues of rule of law, attacks at civil society, and free media, that concerns them as human beings, but talking about it more publicly they feel that that would damage their business. And they say that they prefer discussing very specific laws or legislation that concerns their own company, but not really going public about it. Don't worry, I am not saying names, but Zoltán, is that approach right or correct, or is there any correct approach, or what would be your counter-argument for these businessmen?
Frankly, I do understand them. Most of them are managers. They have to have KPIs, profit. They are pressured from the owners, actually, from the headquarters, naming Amsterdam, London, whatever. So their job is actually to fulfill what the owners are wishing. And this is the easiest way, that looking away and talking privately, but end of the day delivering, and in a way supporting any, let's say, non-democratic system. Taking my example and a couple other people's example, for instance, that's a reason why I'm here. Because in Hungary, rarely I can sit in front of such a great people. And frankly, when it comes to tax investigations, banks doing business in Hungary, for me, it's kind of impossible. It's very difficult because the system is going after you. Banks are very cautious, so the legal departments are questioning, well, probably it's dangerous to deal with this guy because then we will get the next investigation by the National Bank of Hungary. It's better to leave it. So frankly, I'm doing more business outside of Hungary because that's where it's convenient, where it's competitive, and where I feel better. But I do understand the local business community. It's rather staying silent and then can they achieve the commercial goals. When someone is standing out, definitely business will suffer. Mm-hmm. So I think in a way it's logical, and we cannot expect from a large group of entrepreneurs or people that they are suffering, actually. It would be nice, but I'm not naive.
But Václav, isn't it the case that when corruption is being justified in many ways, and the narrative that politicians are telling to people is that corruption is much smaller problem than cultural wars or the LGBTQ community or the support for Ukraine, doesn't it concerns the business? Because basically it sets the sensitivity to corruption to much lower level, and it might also indirectly inspire them to somehow be more creative in avoiding the laws.
I think the situation in the Czech Republic might be a little different because we have a lot of entrepreneurs who are self-grown, self-made business people compared to the other countries where I see that most of the business is really connected through privatization to the state business, and that's completely different situation. And we have them as well, of course. We also have Penta and others, but the difference is that we have significant group of these entrepreneurs, and compared to even Poland, a massive difference is that Czech Republic is small market, so this group of entrepreneurs have to orient on export. So that makes us even less sort of vulnerable on these attacks, and therefore I think that if politicians try to downplay the importance of corruption, it's not massively successful. And if you look at the topics that are running through the society right now, I don't think that it's a massive problem. It always could be better, but you always see in the news, you always see that there are people going to jail for their economic corruption. So, yeah.
But are businesses more outspoken in the Czech Republic when it comes to debate?
I think so, and it has a development. So I mentioned I started 2013. We were just a group of few people. Today we are 30. But in the past it was like, for example, the presidential election 6 years ago. We already had significant number of entrepreneurs who stand out loud and officially support it. When we had the last election with President Pavel, the group of business people who actually went against Mr. Zeman, who was very well known, I believe, significantly grew. That said, we still don't, many people still are not willing to support political parties, or they would like to do it like in a hidden way, and they say that's like a cross line that we cannot cross, and I think that that's what really is needed right now. But at the same time, I have many much bigger entrepreneurs than I am who come back to me and who say, I'm inspired by how you're publicly doing that. Mm-hmm. And we see that more and more people are actually coming out of their bubble. What's going to happen after the election? I must be completely different.
This went in my head as I was listening to you.
It may change, so next year you might hear some completely different talk track.
But Andrej, you get the most difficult task in this round. Like if you are to say something to businesses in Slovakia that might encourage them to be more outspoken and to join more the public debate about these values, what would you tell them?
Yeah, look, I think the values are good for business. If you zoom out 100 or 200 years, nowhere did businesses make more money than in an open democracy supported by strong institutions. So, as a businessman, if you want to make a lot of money, your best bet is to support liberal democracy as it is. Some counter that, I don't know, the rise of China proves otherwise, but if you look at what made China successful, is the reforms back in the day under Deng Xiaoping, which are actually very liberal set of reforms they have done. So from this perspective, it's out of pure self-interest that we want to keep the rule of law, institutions, and liberal democracy to ensure growth. Now, my big problem with how the debate is led today is that a lot of our efforts are trying to preserve what worked in 20th century and is not well equipped to the challenges we are facing in 21st. So, you know, Czech Republic, for example, is like, I live in the Czech Republic also because I don't want to be called Andreja Kiska mladší every time I come to an event, so in Prague I have that benefit. But at the same time, like, Czechs really do benefit from the fact that a lot of people are not dependent on government for their business, and from that perspective it's a unique situation. At the same time, nobody has a TikTok profile or a YouTube profile. At least I don't think Václav is like doing TikTok videos spreading liberal democratic values. But I think that's part of the problem, right? Like, the reason why Russians are so successful with misinformation is because they found totally new platforms of distribution. And you know, the first speaker today kind of showed that only 26% of people trust social media, but that's where they spend most of the time. So they spend most of the time interacting with content which they by default mistrust. And us, as kind of the preservers of liberal democratic values, we actually have a very hard time matching the disinformators and the populists on the channels that matter, right? Like, if you look at, you know,
we will talk about this information.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm going too long.
I know you become very emotional, so do I when I arrived to this topic, but Václav wanted to respond.
Yeah, I wanted just to comment that when we look at valuation of our company, we think, and it's just pure speculation, but we believe that if the very same company would exist in Slovakia, we would today be half of the valuation compared, given all the circumstances we talked about. So specific impact on how engaging with politics impacts your business value. Not speaking of what the company value would be in Hungary.
Actually, it's a reality. I mean, if you look at the recent FDI numbers in Hungary, barely you see any Western European US investor. You see Chinese, most of them are Chinese, Koreans, and that's pretty much it. So the valuations are in Hungary really depressed, and you don't see it how you can increase it. Only if you are pretty much relying on export. So when your revenue is 90% export, then you can have a variation, proper variation. But it's totally unique, frankly.
Andrej, you said an interesting thing that the discourse about democracy and values might have got stuck in the last century. And we observe that actually autocrats are very creative from learning each other, and so they are not the old type of autocrats. They can be technically very advanced, and they are able to keep up with the newest trend. My question is if donors are able to learn from each other, and if donors actually adapted to this new situation, Zoltán.
I think the autocrats ahead, frankly. So I can see clearly how, for instance, the Hungarian government or Chinese and any other governments actually using social media platforms. For instance, when the Orban government took a different shift and they started hiring actually Russian experts. So the Hungarian Communication Ministry had visitors on a monthly basis from Russia, telling them how to manipulate propaganda and what kind of tools they should be using. So tracking the data and influencing. So it's really kind of ahead of the curve, and the donors are not following, because publicly it's very difficult to decide that I'm taking this path. And frankly, let's say anyone would support an NGO with a huge sum of amount, then the politicals, the current government can say you are inflicting and you are actually willing to influence, and that's politics. Stay out of politics. So business, they like to distinguish business and politics, two different fields. Whereas I think they are truly connected, but the politicians would like to say, get out of my business. Politics is my business, don't be involved. If you're supporting, sending money, you are doing exactly politics. In a way they are right, but they are interconnected. You cannot separate them actually.
Mm-hmm. And Václav, the same question, because Zoltán said interesting things, but still the core of the question is that are the donor schemes and the network of philanthropists are able to keep up with the new challenges?
Well, again, speaking for the Czech Republic, we have a community of donors, a group of 30 people. It grew since 2013 from 3-4. And we have events. We actually built our own platform called Aliance pro moderní stát, and we're actually like looking at the efficiency of the support that we are doing, and having some central governance so that we don't need to do it individually, every one of us. So I think that we are learning and we are communicating together. But I think the importance of that is somewhere else. And I'm not saying that it's not important to learn, but I think that the importance is in the community itself. Because one of the massive differences between the Czech Republic and the other countries is that in the Czech Republic we still have these entrepreneurs, they are still in the Czech Republic. And they are not in Hungary, they are not in Slovakia. They are, they flee the countries, and that's a big problem, of course, because the elites, they just, when they give up, they escape. They still have places where to escape. I don't know what the Slovaks are going to be doing with Babiš, but let's see. But the thing is, where I'm going is that I believe that building this community will help us to support each other at the times when we will feel we have to give up, we have to move somewhere else, and we don't, because once that happens, we will follow the routes of other countries.
And I will just tell a quick example, like from the area of journalism. For example, very often I would get addressed, so why don't you apply for a grant for journalism training, and we can provide experts from Netherlands or Germany, and I have a hard time to explain the donors that this is not really what we need, and the main problem in Hungary or in other countries, Bulgaria, Romania, is the core funding for newsrooms. And some of these small grants are even more trouble to go into. And what happened in Hungary, that newsrooms trained themselves to death because that was the only way how to get some of the funding for their members. So this is what I had in mind when I was thinking that is the donor community actually ready to look at the realistic challenges and give up some of the self-presentation and the ambition, to list all the supports they have distributed. And this is a fundamental question.
Can I comment on it? In Hungary, in the last couple of years, the US Embassy actually launched a program supporting free and independent media. Not a big scale, a couple of €100,000, but for small entities, it helps. But for instance, my title called 24.hu, we talked to the editor team, shall we apply or not? And they said clearly, no. Because it's a donor money, we don't need it, frankly, and if and when, we will have a stamp that we are working with US money. So it was the decision by the editorial team, and I was very happy to accept it. But frankly, in order to be totally independent, there are two ways, strong owner or crowdfunding. But not getting the money from China or even from US, because then you are kind of biased, frankly. So logically, we are happy to take money from the European Union because we are part of the European Union. We belong to the European Union. That's fine. But taking money from somewhere else, that's kind of weird. So I totally agree with the editorial team.
Thank you. Andrej, let's go back to Slovakia. Are donors in Slovakia somehow in a position to address these new challenges?
I think Václav has it right in that I think in Slovakia there are very few people who made a lot of money without dealing with the government, unlike in the Czech Republic. And a lot of the people who were here now live in Prague, including me.
Yeah.
And none of us know what happens when Babiš comes to power again. But as things stand today, it is definitely more challenging to find 30 people who are willing to put together new NGOs and big budgets to support democracy in Slovakia. I think it's totally challenging. Unfortunately, I think kind of the example of my father and kind of the struggles he has had with Fico after presidency shows how difficult it is to do on a high-profile level against a regime like ours. But this where, again, as somebody who is an innovator and a venture capitalist, I kind of look at it through kind of the opportunity lens as opposed to the empty lens, which is to say, look, like businessmen can take a very long-term view. Like, I don't care who wins the next election. I care about what my country is going to look like in 10 to 20 years. And from that perspective, I can make serious financial and time-wise contributions today that kind of help answer the question of, all right, like, what can come after Fico? How do we make sure that kind of the liberal democratic values get communicated to average people in a way that they understand? You know, when we talk about the role of independent media, I would say the media are actually more independent than they have ever been because of YouTube and TikTok. Everybody can start a YouTube channel. Everybody can start a TikTok channel. And if you look at like how elections are fought in the US, you know, Joe Rogan podcast gets more views than the political debate on Fox News between Harris and Trump. And so from that perspective, I think there is a set of new emerging media. We need to learn how to win it. And the role of businessmen is to support these long-term initiatives to make sure we are successful in communicating it properly. Because honestly, I don't think today we are.
Yes, but just one additional note that in support, that maybe the main criteria should be that these channels don't spread misinformation. And here we are getting to basically to the main, one of the main points that we have seen in previous entries and speeches. And I mean, the propaganda media and disinformation very often targets also philanthropists. And the civil society is now under a full-scale attack by disinformation. How can businesses, responsible businesses, contribute to this countering of disinformation? Because I would like to add that it's no longer a journalistic issue, that misinformation is not spreading because we journalists do a substandard job.
Can we include here the word safety?
Of course.
Because you mentioned properly Joe Rogan, but he's a kind of guy, he's spreading also fake news, he's spreading lots of fake information, and listening his podcast is not safety. So, whereas I guess the proper media is still relying on accurate and safe information. And that's the big difference. On TikTok, you can frankly get any information. And plus, on the other hand, it's a recent example, the Romanian elections. The guy who just won the first round was supported by TikTok. Now, TikTok admitted that he was sponsored. They didn't declare who was paying, but it was a huge amount of money which was supporting this guy. He was totally unknown. 2 weeks ago, he had a 5% rating, and he won actually with 22%. So I'm sticking to safety. It means that the proper media has to report the information accurately, and you should feel that if you're reading this title, you are in a safe environment, you are not misled, probably you don't like it, because and in many times, the accuracy is not liked by the citizens and by the voters.
Václav?
I'm thinking that what business people should do what they are good at, and that's creating innovation and solving society problems through innovation. And how businesses can help fighting with disinformation. I think there are other relevant parties to help with that problem, whether these are NGOs, education in the schools, building resilient society really starts at the elementary school. So I'm thinking that businesses probably should support these NGOs, those who know, because I don't know how to, I'm not expert in that area. Right? Ask me about how to bring innovation to the market and I can speak for hours.
Yeah.
So I think the role of business shouldn't be like becoming the messiah who saves the world, which sometimes is a feeling we need to fight and we need to take a self-reflection. No, we're not. Let's focus on what we are good at. And if we're good at making money, let's use the money for the greater good.
I was hoping for such an answer as supporting really initiatives that are focused at that. Though I also heard about examples that some companies secured training for their employees for literacy on social media, so those might be also on small scale, but such activities. But Andrej, what would you think? What would be a good way for businesses to fight?
Yeah, so as somebody who is trying to kind of, with the innovations and the investing forecast, like what can happen in 10 years, like I would say we have some like bad news ahead of us. As an example, we have an AI voice company in the portfolio. So what they do is they only need to hear your voice for about 10 seconds. And after that, they can imitate your voice, being angry, happy, crying, whatever, with an accuracy that a human cannot tell it's not you. And so somebody took that company, they're called 11 Labs, and imitated the voice of Joe Biden. And Joe Biden called every family in Pennsylvania ahead of the election and told them not to go and vote for Kamala Harris. And so from that perspective, you know, like a YouTube video by like a disinformator, that's like a piece of cake. But like in 5 years, we are going to have somebody who looks just like Václav and Zoltán with their voice, their looks on the video, saying how much they hate liberal democracy. And there's like nothing we can do about it. And so from this perspective, I think it's exactly what Václav said. Like the only way how our society is going to flourish in the chaos that is unleashed by all these technologies is by having very high quality education, not just in schools, but also for adults. And so from that perspective, you mentioned that I spend a lot of time in education. It's actually a very good place for businessmen, philanthropists to get involved. because it's a long-term bet, right? Like, I don't know, we support a non-profit in the Czech Republic called Eduzmiena. They raise 10 million euros. They don't care if Babiš wins or loses. They are going to work on the individual county level to bring new education, whether the government supports it or not. If government supports it, great. If not, there is enough money in the Czech Republic for the non-profit to continue working. That's what gets me excited.
I am very happy to pass on one question, which I often get as a journalist. Should civil society accept donations or money from rather problematic companies or companies which were indicated in corruption cases in the past? And what should be the approach, Zoltán?
I think this money should be declined, frankly. There is no other way. It's hurting your integrity, it's hurting your mission, because the next day it will be in the news that you're associated with black money, with shadow money, and then your mission is actually kind of destroyed. So I truly understand it's a very difficult position. You are aiming to get money. You have to pay the salaries. There are families behind who are earning money from this NGO, but you have to decline. So I'm terribly sorry, but here comes the solution. It's always crowdfunding. Look at the venture, what Mr. Kovacic is starting. Suddenly there was great money behind. There's another example in Hungary. Is a new opposition party. They are truly funded crowd, and now they have already 20,000 regular payer on a monthly basis, which is a huge amount of money. So I think the citizens with a small ticket can buy their piece in the democracy. It's not only in every 4 years, but on a monthly basis. And that's what we have to teach them. And as Andrej pointed out correctly, everything depends on education, frankly.
Mm-hmm. But the situation sometimes is more complicated, as I am told by the civil society, that let's say we have a company which was indicated in a corruption case in the past, and they would ask, like, how much time should pass until you arrive to the point that you consider the company cleaned. And of course, some businessmen might have the Khodorkovsky moment and these things. Václav, how would you approach this question?
Well, for me, it is really surprising even that the fact that the very question exists.
It does.
So,
it does.
Because it's no-brainer, right? Like, why are you even asking that? It was my first thought, like, why are you even asking that? It's so clear. So absolutely, we're not accepting such money. Even if that happened 10 years in the past, doesn't matter. Sorry, we're not accepting, period. But there is another dimension of that question, and that is, when I look at our group of philanthropists who fund these activities, when the dark side wants to attack us, for example, in the National Fund for Independent Journalism, what they say is, in their media, they say, well, it's a group of billionaires who is actually buying openly, and they even speak about that out loud. And it doesn't matter if you're 10, 15, 20, 30, they still have that power of attack. And what Zoltán said, I think if you take this bigger money or big money, and you are capable of combining that with the crowdfunding so that you create a community, I think that's the best way. So I would say for those who have bigger money, spend them also, and we're struggling with that. It's one of our biggest headaches, whether that is the independent journalism support, whether that is the alliance thing I talked about, or other activities. We struggle with activating the communities because we're a bigger group of people, and frankly, if you ask me, it's so much easier to get to put another 100k euro on the table than building community. I have no idea how to do it, and I don't have time to do it. And putting 100k on the table is just simpler. So I would really concur to what Zoltán said. The communities have to be in place, and that's our weakness.
it's a no-brainer for me as a journalist, but as you described the Slovak environment, it's quite a different environment, and businesses that might be able to give, many of them might have a troubled past. So that's why I opened that question. Andrej, do you have anything to add what your colleague just said?
I think the best conversation is the one which is controversial. So I'm gonna take the opposite view, if you don't mind.
No.
Look, if you look at the top 50 or 100 richest people, 80% of them are going to be oligarchs. They have made generational wealth and benefited from our economy hugely. All of them are getting to an age where something has to happen with that money. Either they're going to give it to their kids who are going to buy islands and jets and I don't know what, or we can put it to better use. I actually think one of the biggest philanthropic endeavors available today in Central and Eastern Europe is to figure out how to take this generational wealth and put it to a good use. I'm not saying that a non-profit has to take money directly from any one of the oligarchs you can think of, but I absolutely do not think that we should let that money go to waste.
And the reason why I'm laughing is that I've heard exactly the same thing from your father just 2 weeks ago.
Yes, it is true that
you're probably your father's son.
Not just that, but we are working on the project together, which is probably why he mentioned it. But yes, there is a lot of money that has been generated in Central Europe, and I'm looking forward to putting it to a good use.
Thank you. And we have left a little time for taking a question from Slido. And I've seen one question which asks how businesses can make sure that philanthropic activities should be pluralistic enough and cover all ranges of the society. That was an interesting question. And there was also one about the apolitical aspect of philanthropy. But let's look at first at that question, how you make sure that all areas of the society are represented in philanthropic activities, and that it's actually...
I think it's hard to do it. Philanthropists should choose focus, 2-3 focus, and they should support those areas. I do not believe that someone can do 10 topics, 10 areas. We are focusing, as Sandra or myself, we are focusing education and kids. For instance, you can say, why you're not supporting sport? It's important. I think we have bigger issues in the education and how the kids are treated in the hospital, etc., etc. So I think you should be focused which area you are choosing, and then what you choose, you have to go all in. So that's my view, actually.
Thank you. Václav, I would ask you the question that some people say that philanthropy should remain apolitical, but how is it possible when democracy is in danger and it needs also business support?
Well, I think that the theory of apolitical business is coming from the Soviet heritage. And I think it's just nonsense, right? It's just, it doesn't work that way. We are absolutely impacted and influenced by the environments in which we do our business. And saying, I don't care about probably the biggest impact on my business, well, then how can you be successful, right? And if you want, as an entrepreneur, if you want your valuation to grow, you cannot be apolitical. And apolitical doesn't mean that you go to politics. And I absolutely, many people are, my frequent question I frequently get is, Václav, when you are going to establish your own political party? And I say never, because business is not like politics, and because politics is about compromises. And I'm not used to do compromises. I'm a sole owner of a business where I'm used to make decisions, and you cannot apply these principles in politics. So don't mix these two things up. But that doesn't mean the fact that I don't want to create a party, and I never say never, but I really don't. It would kill me seeing what's going on there. But that doesn't mean I'm not interested in politics. I'm not, and I think that's the difference.
It's actually a very widespread stereotype that some businesses or businessmen who support, businesswomen who support NGOs or initiatives, they are paving their way to politics.
I gave you an example. For European elections, I donated some money to a political party to support them. And I thought like, well, this is, I'm going to get from journalists, I'm going to get really smashed from left and right and that's going to be disaster. And I was preparing for that. And I said, well, the best thing I can do is that instead of having a journalist figuring this out and using that against me, I went on LinkedIn and I made a post when I explained how much I've donated, what were my reasons. And I was super transparent about that. And I thought like, okay, let's see what's going to happen. And I actually got on that post from journalists, but also from organizations like Transparency International, comments like, this is exactly how you should be doing that. So I absolutely braced for attack from like my social bubble. And I was really surprised that it did not happen.
We had one question, it disappeared, but I would like to ask it because it was for Andrej, that what type of educational initiative you would support in Slovakia or you would propose to fund?
Yeah, I will be super fast. Look, I think there's just not enough money in the non-profit sector. And I think that like this set of last questions kind of illustrated the problem. You have a lot of non-profits who don't have money, and then you have a lot of oligarchs who some of them even want to give the money, but the non-profits do not want to take them. And I think we kind of have to learn how to redistribute the money that has been made into a productive way to support non-profits and good causes for the future. Look at Dobrý Aniel, right? Like just like a 30-second example and a small promo for my father. Dobrý Aniel is 30,000 euros short this year on their operating expenses because some of the donors fell out. Political system, struggles we have today in our society. And it's extremely difficult to fundraise 30,000 euros for one of the best non-profit projects created in Slovakia in the last 20 years. So just to end on a note, if you have 30,000 spare euros, my father will be really grateful.
You are very charmingly avoided my question, but maybe you can answer it after the panel to the person who asked it. Thank you very much, Zoltán Varga, Václava Muchna, and Andreja Kiska for the debate.
Thank you.
Thank you.